Wang Mingdao, 1900 to 1991. Wang Mingdao is regarded today as the dean of the house churches, China's unregistered congregations in which tens of millions of Christians worship, and an unrivaled symbol of uncompromising faith. These are not ways this humble servant of Christ ever described himself, yet they accurately capture the significance of the life and ministry of a man who dared to live for Christ in the face of profound and persistent affliction, opposition, and persecution. A Shard of Iron. In 1899, a group of Chinese peasants, who called themselves the Righteous and Harmonious Fists, began attacking and killing Christian missionaries and their Chinese converts. The Boxers, as they are better known, believed they channeled Chinese deities who could make them invincible against modern weapons. By June 1900, they were approaching Beijing and were now supported by imperial forces. Foreigners living and working in Beijing took refuge in a defensible district of the city known as the Legation District, along with about 2,800 Chinese Christians. Among them were Wang's father, mother, and sister. Conditions in the Legation District deteriorated under the ensuing siege. One day, Wang reports, "My father climbed a ladder to the top of the wall where he could see outside. When he came down, he told my mother that there was a strong force of Boxers and government soldiers outside, and that sooner or later they would be able to force their way into the legation." What might follow terrified the Chinese Christians, and Wang's father suggested it would be better for them to take their own lives than to fall into the hands of the Boxers. So it was that not long afterwards, someone brought news to my mother that my father had strangled himself. Wang was born to his widowed mother 1 month and 3 days later, on July 25, 1900. His grandmother named him Iron. Wang came to see the significance of his name much later in life, when he read what God said to Jeremiah, "For behold, I have made thee this day a defenced city, and an iron pillar, and brazen walls against the whole land. They shall fight against thee, but they shall not prevail against thee, for I am with thee, saith the Lord, to deliver thee." Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 18 and 19. The siege of the Legation District was lifted on August 14th, less than a month later, when British and American units entered Beijing. Poverty, immorality, and mortality. Wang's young mother was left with a newborn son and 6-year-old daughter, but no husband, home, or income. She was able to secure just enough financial help through her church to eventually buy a house in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Beijing. She rented out as many rooms as she could, but the family remained very poor. Wang recalled the extremity of their situation. "In those days, I used to take a basket and go to places outside well-to-do houses where they dumped the rubbish. I collected enough rubbish to take home and use it to make a fire, and in this way we could reduce slightly our expenditure on fuel for heating and cooking. I carried on doing this for many years. The rubbish was not enough, of course, and decades later Wang could vividly recall his thin clothes and frozen hands and feet. My hands were so cracked and painful it was almost impossible to use them for writing." But the pains in his body were not as bitter to Wang as the immorality that surrounded him. The rooms his mother rented out were often taken by the most disreputable sorts of people. They would lie, cheat, steal, gamble, loaf, smoke opium, abuse their spouses and children, fight with each other, and refuse to pay their rent. Men would sometimes rent rooms for women they claimed to be their wives, but were actually their mistresses or prostitutes. By the time Wang went off to boarding school, he was as profane as any of his classmates, and yet smugly self-righteous, it seems, since he was not as wicked in his own eyes as the people in the courtyard back home.